Hello, everybody. Good morning. I see some in time zone of morning. Good evening, good afternoon to everybody. Thank you very much for coming. My name is Tal Gibish. I am the founder of a boutique relocation immigration company called Gibish Consulting GmbH, and we are helping with relocation and immigration, everything that you need pre-departure and after arrival to Germany. You can find all the services in our website. Today, we are going to talk about choosing your home in Germany, big city, small town, village. But before we start, I actually want to announce a new service that we just got a license for, that I'm very proud after months of bureaucracy. This is Germany after all. The service is EOR, Employer of Record, and this service provides employment services for people who want to move to Germany and want to stay with the previous employer company, international, and then the EOR service actually provides the opportunity to be a German employee with all the social rights, legal rights of an employee in Germany by us. So if you want to hear more details, you're welcome to write me and I'll provide more options. And of course, for non-EU, it also provides the option for a work permit or a blue card, depends on the position and the background. So welcome to write me if you're interested in details. And let's start. So today we're going to talk, the topic actually came up because I had people from different countries asking me to compare their current place of living to places in Germany. And assuming that if they have, for example, a farm in the US, that would be the same as a farm in Germany. The same with someone who lives in New York City and believes that Berlin would be the best option for them. So there are many factors that you need to take under consideration before you decide on where to live in Germany. Obviously, you can move between cities, you can move between places. Nothing is final solution. And you can start in Dresden and then to move to a village in Bayern, in Bavaria. So this is definitely possible, but also understand that Germany is not one experience. Life in Berlin feels completely different from Munich, Hamburg, or Leipzig, and even smaller towns like well, smaller, I mean, relatively speaking, like Augsburg or Regensburg or Aachen, Rostock, even you can call it smaller than the big ones. They're very different in everything. So today we will talk about lifestyles and transportation and integration, prices, and also we're going to cover the emotional toll that it takes from someone who moves to a new country, but to a wrong location. So we're going to start from actually unexpected direction, but also very makes sense for a webinar that by a relocation agent and immigration agent, which is immigration offices. So this is a very important factor for people who have no EU citizenship and they need to deal with the immigration office at their place, the location that they choose to live in. They have to deal with the bureaucracy there, not only the registration to the local authority, but also for the residence permit. If you're coming from a privileged country like the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, South Korea, or Israel, then you're allowed to apply for a residence permit from within Germany. If you're any other nationality, of course, depends on where. But if you're coming from China or India or Egypt or, well, most of the countries, then you need a visa to enter Germany. And then you convert it to a residence permit. So dealing with the immigration office sounds very frightening, but mostly I can say the process is very, very, very long. And if you choose a small place, it doesn't really mean that it's going to be a short process. For example, in Berlin, we're going to start with the biggest city in Germany. In Berlin, you have few immigration offices, depends on the residence permit type. For Blue Card, you have a different office than the freelancers. If you have a fast track work permit or Blue Card, that's a different office. Overall, in Berlin, work more than 1,000 people at the immigration offices. It doesn't mean that the process is fast. Sometimes it can be really, really long. There, in general, by federal law, it means that they have to respond within 3 months, usually not the case all over Germany. In Munich, for example, a simple process can take between 8 to 10 months. In small places, small towns, let's say like Augsburg, that is also in Bavaria, 30 minutes from Munich, it can take about 2 months to get a residence permit for someone who is married to EU national. In Düsseldorf, for example, it's very it's kind of average. It's not really long, but it can take between 3 to 4 months to anyone, and it doesn't matter the type. And unlike many think in areas of the American bases, in the small villages, which are called Kreis, that are next to Kaiserslautern, for example, which is a small town, the area around it, the Kreis, is super, super, super slow. And that derives from a few reasons. And the main one is that they have no authority to decide for themselves. So like in Munich, for example, which has a different problem, which we will speak in a moment. In Berlin, for example, they're allowed to decide, the caseworkers decide. We can have debate of they decide right or wrong, but they have the authority to decide. The same as Munich, the same in most of the places in Germany. But in really small places, sometimes the caseworkers do not have the authority to decide, and then they set up to a different authority, higher authority, the application for review. It can take more than a year. And during this time, you do have the legal ground, Fiktionswirkung, to stay in Germany, but not really to, it's not recommended to travel, and definitely not to work in the meantime if you don't have the work permit for that. In different types of residence permit, but the permit to work, if you don't have it, you're not allowed to work. So you can actually spend, like in Cologne, for example, for a language course residence permit, it takes about 6 months in order to get an answer. In the meantime, you can lose, your spot in the course, and you're not able to work, so you have to live with your savings. So this is something that you have to take under consideration when you move to a place. In Munich, I do want to say that there is a special problem I think more than a year ago, there was a corruption case that was unfortunately handled by a few caseworkers that work with an immigration agent and that bribed them. And for in return to given priority and approving his client's permits. So, and then found out, arrests, corruption. It it happened twice in Munich. So I think they're more careful even and slower more than usual. So this is something that is very, very important to check before you move to Germany and before you choose a place. So this is the first factor that is actually logic to make for an immigration agent. And then we are talking about lifestyle, because lifestyle can be very different between big cities and small cities and Kreis areas, like villages. And then if you want to see everything is green next to you, of course, a village is very tempting, but sometimes a village is very German, can be. And if you're not with the language or patience for understanding the mentality, it might be very hard to integrate there. And everything is green and amazing around, but you're going to be alone. The same, for example, you can be in certain areas in a small town like Nuremberg. So you can live in the Altstadt, and this is one of my favorite places in Germany, Nuremberg. Altstadt Nuremberg is a beautiful place. If you go out a little bit from the Altstadt, you have neighborhoods that feel like a dream. The same in Berlin. It's a huge city, almost 4 million people. But then you have places that you feel like you're completely out of the city. And you can walk your dog in the woods, and it's like complete forest next to you or huge parks. It's great. But you have to make sure that the green areas you have to match the lifestyle that you want. And then we go to transportation. Public transportation in general is very good in Germany. I'm complimenting here to the public transportation. It's not always the case, of course. Deutsche Bahn has about 70% delays overall. They're trying to improve it. That would take a few years. But in general, in big cities, you have great public transportation of 24/7, even in the weekends, on holidays. Late at night, also you have options. If usually you have more than one company operates public transportation lanes. So if one company strikes, so then you have options, they give options to the others. It might be busier than usual, but still you would have the option. If you live in a remote place, then you would have a car, or you can choose to have a car in a place that has a functioning public transportation. And then you also have to think of the cost of gas and others. I know that when the war with Iran started, for example, so the prices of gas here was for a regular gas tank, the price was over €2. And the Americans in Ramstein complained, the soldiers and the active duty soldiers and their families complained that the price is up and is now 127. This is the price that I exactly remember. So, they get very benefits, and for them that is very, very high price. In most of Germany, we actually we wish that we would have these prices. So it depends on where you live and what you are used to. For in East Germany, for example, in the eastern part of Germany, or should I say, what used to be East Germany, the country, which is not Bavaria. Bavaria is in East Germany, but is not part of former East Germany. Prices of gas are lower. So if you buy a car, actually most prices are lower in most places, no matter if it's big city like Leipzig or Dresden, or Thuringen, somewhere in Thuringen. So then you have lower prices, which is also consideration on not only for gas, but also for a lot of stuff. So this is something that you should consider. Do you want a car? Maybe you should start without a car and then see if you need it. If you have a family, if you have kids, sometimes you want to go out to places and it's not available unless you have a car, which totally makes sense in some of the places in Germany. However, I do have to emphasize that Germany came up, I think 2020 that was, in 2021, with Deutschland ticket, which means that you have, now it's 63 euros a month, and for paying this price, you get a plastic card and you can travel all over Germany, all cities, all public transportation means, everything except for fast trains. ICE and ICE, and then unless you want the fast trains and then you have to pay for it, everything is included in the Deutschland ticket, including if you have a regional train, for example, that goes from Freiburg to Basel in Schweiz, so in Switzerland. So then, if you have regional train, probably it's included in the Deutschland ticket. If you want to go to Luxembourg, Netherlands, so sometimes you would find these places affordable and included in the Deutschland ticket. So when you choose a place, always consider the cost that you might have with the car, and do you want to have a car? There are many people that found themselves really having fun with hiking or walking more than they used to in their home country, which is great. In most of the places in Germany are designed for people to walk. To be fair, most of the places in Europe are designed for people to walk and not to travel by car, which is great. It's something that you have to, I think, get used to it. On a side note, there's a culture called Wanderstück, and then Wandern, and then you actually have a cane that you walk with, a walking stick, and then you put kind of tags of where you've been. So this is a whole culture, so you can participate with this if there's a kind of a group like that or a club like that around where you live. If you want to live in a place that is affordable, Munich is not the place. Munich is the most expensive place ever in Germany. No matter where you're going to live in Munich, it's probably not going to be cheap. Same with Frankfurt am Main, and certain areas in Berlin, and also certain places that are not big cities, but they have specific, mostly you can find very expensive places in villages in what used to be West Germany. In East Germany, it's less it's less expensive. So if you want to rent a house or buy a house, there are affordable places. Munich is not a place if you want to live affordable life. But there are many other places that you can go to, and you have to consider, do you want your life to be, you have cafes next to your apartment? Do you want to have supermarket right next by, if it's 10 minutes walking and not 10 minutes driving, or more, of course. It depends if you want bars next to you, if you want a lot of people next to you. So all of these things are factors. Where do you want to live? And also, Bundesland is different from another Bundesland, and within the Bundesland, with the states, there are 16 states in Germany. There are differences as well. I'll take as example Bavaria, Bayern, which Nuremberg, the atmosphere is almost village-like, and Munich, it's super city life. And then you have Augsburg, that is very quiet and small town and really nice. And then you have Passau on the border with Austria. And there it's more of a university city, very small, very nice. And then it's beautiful. Highly recommend to go and at least to visit there. And it's affordable place, and you have everything from everything. So it's probably nice. And all of this in big Bavaria. And you have to take under consideration that when you enter Bavaria from the Autobahn, for example, it takes from the border to enter Bavaria to Munich, it's 2 hours drive on the Autobahn, where has no speed limit. So it's huge. It's huge. I think that Americans can relate mostly to the distances that you have to drive in order to get to places. I think that's mostly Americans. Language. So I talked before about how important that is to have more integration in the area that you live in. If you know a little bit German, so that can be very good. You have to understand the cultural differences between you, wherever you're coming from, and the German mentality at the place that you should choose to live in. For example, I'll take Kaiserslautern. Most of the people actually, make a living out of the Americans and their families in the bases and outside of the bases. There's a whole industry. And when Trump decided to take out 100, I think, a few thousands of soldiers and their family from Germany, people in Kaiserslautern and surroundings were shocked. What's going to happen to our business? In the meantime, obviously, Trump decided not to. But the fact that they need people financially doesn't mean that they like them. And this is something that is very important, because the government, for example, they say we want immigrants. We want the people to come, to live here, to contribute to society. Even if you're talking about immigrants that come to work, or immigrants that come to retire, even though there's no official retirement permit in Germany. But as some of you know, there is another option for retirement. So the government said, yes, we want everybody. The people not, I can tell you the authorities for sure, they don't like immigrants. You have to know how to handle them. But the people is a different story, because some Germans might be very happy from the cultural diversity, and some people might not be. So it's very common in Germany to think that the problem is mostly in former East Germany. People there are more voters to the far right, the extreme far right, and then they don't like foreigners and they insist on German. Some of it is true, but it's not only former East Germany. It's in many places. And what I would recommend, in order for all these factors that we're going to talk about today, I highly suggest to come to a visit before you move. And not only to see the Christmas markets, which are beautiful, of course, and the oldest in the world, but also to explore the places from a resident point of view and not only tourist, because tourist you can be the rest of your life. As a resident, it's very, very important that you would choose at least something that would be some suitable for you. Afterwards, of course, you can move, but to land in a place that you feel uncomfortable with, or you just find out things about the place, it's not really nice. And we're going to talk about the emotional toll afterwards. It's very, community is something that is especially important for immigrants, for expats that are coming, for a short time. It is very important. You're coming sometimes without the whole family. Sometimes if you have a family, so you're coming with your spouse and your kids. And if you don't have family, if you don't come with family, sorry, everybody has family. So if you don't come with family, so you don't want to feel alone. And sometimes people, there's a famous saying of Robin Williams, actually, that the more that he has more people around him, he feels more alone. So that, unfortunately, a state of mind, but it's very recognizable. And in Germany and in Northern Europe, it's actually very recognized as winter depression when people don't go out of the houses, which in some places you go out no matter the weather. It depends on how well you're what you're wearing and not the bad weather. But how you integrate into the community, it's very important, because other countries, sometimes the mentality is when you move to a new place, then you invite all your neighbors to housewarming party. And just an example how immigrants view it is there's the language test that people must pass, and at the B1 level even less, but some of the topics are very known before, and one of the main topics and common topics is write a letter to your neighbors and invite them to a housewarming party. And one of my clients once told me, it's like science fiction. Nobody knows the neighbors in Germany, which is partially correct. You know your neighbors, mainly if you live in a building. So mainly you know them because you need the packages. Someone has the packages for you, or you keep the packages for others. So that's how you know your neighbors. In a small village, it's a little bit different, because the neighbors might not see you as someone that they want to interact with. So it's more work to put in your integration. So anywhere that you want to move to, always to check before if this is a place that you want to be part of the community. If the community is very welcoming to internationals, great. You might have a better chance to integrate. But if less and less people, they might be less open to immigrants and internationals that are coming. That said, international groups, big international groups in places, it's a very complicated topic. I get a lot, if I'm Israeli, I don't want to be with a lot of Israelis around me. If I'm American, I had enough Americans in my life. I don't want to be next to them. Brits are the same. So, and of course, there are many countries that I don't want to be with my own nationality. No. So this is something to take note, because sometimes it might be very helpful that you have people that understand your mentality, understand your joke. You know, people say that I'm very funny, but in my native language, not in German. Probably humor is a whole different topic. But you sometimes need someone to understand you, and not only on a phone call with your family and friends. back in your home country. If you want to understand something, not always you can understand it in German. So sometimes it's very helpful that you have someone that knows you and can understand you. Some people are not interested. I do, however, have to say that Germans are not cold as they are painted. Like they don't hate you and they don't ignore you. They just have different mentality that connections are built very slowly and upon trust. So it takes a lot of time until you have German friends. Sometimes when you have shared interests, it might be more than that, but I always give the example of my own wedding with a German. He worked in a company for 8 years at that point, and he invited to the wedding only 2 people from his workplace because wedding is a private event. We had a big wedding. We had 50 people, most of them from my side. He's German. So then, it's a matter of mentality. So sometimes it's very comfortable to have people who understand you, to speak your language, to have your mentality. And sometimes it's really not comfortable. Either way, you don't have to associate with the people that are, that you don't like, of course. That said, sometimes having a concentration of internationals in places makes the locals very upset. They might see it as they're expanding, they're taking our places. So it might seem very and feel for the locals very hostile. So it's something that, you need to take under consideration. Sometimes it happens. And now I want to switch to work opportunities. Talk about work opportunities. By the way, if you have any questions, please feel free to write it in the chat. I would be happy to answer on questions that are related to the topic. Work opportunities. So Germany is a big country. Different places have different opportunities. If you're in high tech, for example, most probably the best place for you would be in Berlin. If you are high tech, but from defense tech or fintech, your place for defense tech, for example, a lot of companies are now in Munich. Fintech that are not traditional high tech might be more comfortable in Frankfurt. Or the area of Frankfurt because it's financial center. If you want to work in more plant or heavy machinery or heavy industry or low tech industry, let's call it like that, then the areas of Düsseldorf, Dortmund are more suitable for you. Of course, if you're in maritime industry or any kind of shipping, that would be Hamburg. And of course, engineers, they are everywhere. Germany loves engineers that knows German. So it's very, very important to know where you have more work opportunities. Automotive industry, though it's not really in not really blossoming lately. They do try to change, but there are many places since COVID time. There are many places that allow the option to come only one day in the office. So I can tell you that I have a client, a family that came 2 years ago. He works for Volkswagen in Wolfsburg, and they live in Berlin. And he travels one day a week to Wolfsburg, and he's very happy. He doesn't have to. On the other hand, there are companies that are now trying to force employees to go back to the office 5 days a week. Probably wouldn't work. The unions here are very strong and can resist. So there is a question if it's possible to work remotely and how many times you have to be in the office. And like I can tell you another couple that I had, the husband works in Frankfurt, so he comes twice a week to the office, and his husband spend the weekend in their apartment in Berlin. So they have 2 apartments, which is also expensive, and you have to take under consideration if your salary allows you to. So this is very important. Salaries are usually according to the cost of living in the place. So salaries in Munich would be immensely higher than the ones in Berlin. In Frankfurt, also higher, but in small places like Wittenberg or some areas in Sachsen-Anhalt, Lower Saxony, or Niedersachsen, Lower Saxony. So then it can be much lower salaries, but much lower cost of living. So if this is something that you're aiming for, you should research this as well. Okay. And now I want to talk about the emotional toll that might have of relocating to the wrong place. So, of course, there is no right completely or wrong completely. There is no certain thing. There's nothing certain in life besides taxes and debt. So you have to understand before you move that the place that you chose might not be the best place for you. And therefore, we offer the solution of taking a short-term apartment between 3 to 12 months, furnished apartment, and then you land in one place, you land comfortably, you have place to live for a few months, and then you can search for your next apartment or house in a different place, maybe a different neighborhood in the same city, maybe, or same town, maybe in a remote village, maybe in another state completely. So it's an opportunity for you to decide if you want to move or not. Of course, it has a lot of factors, depends on the workplace, depends on any other factor in your life. But it's something to take into consideration, because if you choose a place and you take the chance on, I'll give an example. I had a family that moved to a big city in Germany. I'm not going to mention the city. And I recommended for a short-term apartment, and they said, well, we have an opportunity from someone in really, really great neighborhood, and the apartment is great, and it's 4th floor, and yes, we need to lose weight, and it's so cool that we have that, and the option is for 5 years minimum. I said, I don't think that's, 4th floor, it's nice for the first week that you're getting in shape. Afterwards, it becomes a nightmare. Don't forget that you're coming with groceries. A few times a week you go to grocery store or supermarket. It can be very, very exhausting. Now they are stuck in an apartment that not really suitable for their current needs, which was different 2 years ago, but now it's not suitable for them. And they are locked in a contract for 5 years. The same thing goes for long-term apartment, because long-term apartments here are basically unlimited. Yes, of course, you can break the contract. There is cancellation clause, much easier than a short-term apartment. But until you find this long-term apartment, you kind of like buying, a cat in a bag. So this is something to consider. Um, don't It's so exhausting to look for a long-term apartment or a house. Of course, it depends on your budget. It depends on the documents that you have to bring with you, that you have to provide, mostly to show that you're financially stable and not just have large sum of money. But this is something that is very valuable to make sure that you want to live in the place, because afterwards looking for another apartment, it's exhausting and frustrating. And then you become upset and everything is affected by it. So it takes its toll. And a lot of your experiences become really bad because you don't like the area, you don't like the place, you don't like the people. And then the whole moving experience, stressful enough. And to add to that, also the frustration from choosing the wrong place. Just, all you have to do is preparation, research, and even better to come and visit and see the places that you consider to live in, and then to see how to go from there. So that was all from me today. If anyone has any questions, I would be happy to answer. Okay. So in that case, I hope that I gave good information that would be useful for you, either before you move to Germany or after you move to Germany, and things that you should take into consideration when you choose. Yes, I did mention that there was another way to retire in Germany. Yes, we already discussed that on the residence permit, and the other option, which is very specific, how to get it. It's not very easy, but it is possible. It just doesn't, they don't call it retirement like in Spain or in Portugal. But yes, we've been through this in webinars that talked about this topic. Yes. So I wish everybody a good day and or evening. And in Germany, it's still very much light. It feels like 4 p.m. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I'm available. And thank you for signing up. And if you want to move, so talk to us. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.